The viewpoints of J. Michael McCoy, his co-hosts, guests, and callers are not necessarily those of any particular religion or denomination. They may or may not be the views of Webcast One Live, the cleaning guy, the woman who brings in cookies, the parking valet, the staff of The View from a Pew, Jill King, Lucinda, the graphic design lady, Justin, Bob, Brian, Linda, or anyone else of sound mind or questionable mental capacity. Should you be offended, provoked, triggered, intimidated, shocked, confused, or inspired to think independently, call our studio lines at 515-442-KPOG and join the conversation. After all, it's your voice we want to hear. Now, live from the Jordan Crossing Studios, here's your host,
Frank the Verse Thomas.
Well, welcome. It is Frank the Verse Thomas here at View from the Pew. I'm not hearing. Okay, all right, I'm hearing now. Didn't have my earbuds turned up very loud. There we are. I'm hearing. All right. Thinking critically, thinking independently, that's what I'm all about. I don't walk to the beat of anyone's drum. Okay? I'm kind of a countercultural kind of guy. I don't know if you ever remember the movie back in the 80s. I think it was, The Midnight Express. I'll see if I can look that up here real quick. Midnight Express. I was trying to tell my friend Christian about this movie. I don't think he recalled it. Midnight Express was Billy Hayes was a Brad Davis. I think Brad Davis is dead. I'm not sure. I think he ended up with AIDS. I'm going to check and see if Brad is still alive. Let's see. Where's he at? Let me check him real quick. He died. Yes, he did. He died in. He was born in November 6, 1949. Died in September 8, 1991. I believe he contracted AIDS, if my memory serves me correct. But I could be wrong. But anyway, why I want to mention this is there's a particular scene in the movie. So I'll read you a little bit of, and of course everybody remembers, let me see if I can get Alexa to play something. Alexa, play the theme from Midnight Express.
Theme from Midnight Express isn't included with Prime, but is available with Amazon Music Unlimited. Play over 50 million songs on this Echo Dot with Amazon Music. It's $3.99 a month. Cancel anytime. Terms in the Alexa app. Should I sign you up and play theme from Midnight Express?
No, Alexa. Stop all applications. Alexa, play Midnight Express.
Midnight Express by Walter Murphy on Amazon Music.
I think this was, not sure. It's not sounding familiar right this second, but I think it may. Alexa, stop. Anyway, it was a Alexa, stop. It was a theme during this movie, and it was quite a riveting movie and quite a riveting theme. And it was played during the 1970, it seemed like 1979, 1980. It was played at a lot of basketball arenas and stuff. If you particularly was watching the Philadelphia 76ers play the Los Angeles Lakers during those eras of 79 and 80. you would have heard this theme. Billy Hayes, Brad Davis, is a young American caught by Turkish police while attempting to smuggle hashish out of Istanbul. He's tried and sent to prison for 4 years where he endures all manner of privation and abuse, and he finishes up his time. He's shocked to learn that the Turkish High Court has added another 30 years to his sentence. He's now thoroughly demoralized, and his life in prison grows increasingly unbearable until he concludes his escape is his only option. So his girlfriend comes in, and she's telling him, you got to get your act together, man. You got to get your act together. He's just in a weakened condition, and he's not doing well. He's not ate well. He's not exercised well. So there's an exercise area. I don't know if it's in the basement of the prison. I don't know where exactly it is, but there is a scene in which everybody's walking one direction. There's hundreds of people, and they're walking one direction. Maybe they're walking counterclockwise, and he decides to go clockwise, or maybe they're walking clockwise, and he decides to go counter. I don't remember the exact direction they were going in the scene. It seems like to me they were going clockwise, and he was wanting to walk across the grain and go counter because he needed to get fit. He needed to get exercise because there was money inside this book that his lady friend left him, and he was going to use this money to bribe his way out of the prison. There was a real brutal Paul L. Smith, if you remember this guy. This guy was Pluto in the Popeye, the real Popeye movie, if you remember Paul L. Smith. But he was the brutal Turkish guard that beat up and abused and mistreated this kid. I think it was, okay, here's answer my question. Directed by Alan Parker, Mississippi Burning, and written by Oliver Stone, Platoon, the 78 film related the purportedly true story of Billy Hayes, played by Brad Davis, an American who was sent to a brutal prison in Turkey for attempting to smuggle hashish out of the country. I'll see if I can find that theme song a little bit later, because I don't think that was it. I might be able to find it on YouTube and play a little bit of it, unless I get into too much trouble with YouTube. But it's kind of a haunting theme in your head, and if you remember seeing the movie, this song would probably haunt you the rest of your life. I can hear it thumping in my head, but I can't. There was no words to it. It was only an instrumental. But the idea was he was walking counterculture, and that's the verse. The verse walks a little counter to culture. I don't walk to the beat of everybody's drum. So, if you would like to give me a call, give me a text, you can do so at the Service Legends Talk text line, and that number is 515-442-5764. And as always, we do our show Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. here at Jordan Crossing Church. I'm going to look that up a second while I'm over here on this other keyboard. See if I can find that song. Let me see. Theme to Midnight Express. No, where are you at? Let me try that again. Theme to Midnight. There, let's see if that pops up.
Picture that first day the sun comes up in this country and Donald Trump is no longer the president. I am running to be the president who will pick up the pieces of our divided nation and do right.
Sorry for that. I got a political commercial here. Okay, now we're going, I think. Yeah, this is the theme here. I'll play about 15 seconds of it. All right, so you kind of remember that, and it's called The Chase. This is, he's trying to get his way out of the Turkish prison, get himself out of Turkey, and get across the border to some other country so he can get out. And it's a quite intense movie. For the time, it was kind of a cutting-edge thing. But I just wanted to say that because that's kind of Frank the Verse's attitude. I walk not always with the beat of everyone's drum. Walk to my own beat. I believe my own thoughts. I don't necessarily conform. And I take a certain amount of pride in that, and I wear that as a badge of honor. So let me get to, we're going to talk about our Sabbath school lesson. I'm going to mention that, and I need to tell you what that is for today, Wednesday. That is humbled before God. And I lost my, up here in the, if you're looking on Facebook feed, it would be the right picture. I used to have a little box here where it mentioned the Sabbath school lesson, but somehow that has disappeared. Maybe it's somehow been pushed off the screen. I might have to find out. Where that is. Yeah, that's the theme, and it's kind of haunting, and it's 3 minutes and 37 seconds long. If you want, it's just called "Theme to Midnight Express." If you want to look that up on YouTube. Anyway, so we're going to get to some Sabbath school lessons here, and I done a real quick pre-record before I got in here for our Life Talk syndicated, or not syndicated, but our show that I'm pre-recording. And that's played every morning at 6 a.m., Monday through Friday, and then I believe on Saturday, I think the time is 6:15, 6:30. I think it's a slightly different time. But and then let me look that website up for you. Just want to get that address for you. That is lifetalk.net. It's Life Talk Radio is a network of over 100 radio stations featuring Christian music, Christian talk and teaching, and other religious programming. Its headquarters are in Riverside, California. I've been through there. Riverside, let's see, it's Fontana, Riverside, and what's the third one? Riverside is where the old NASCAR racetrack used to be. Fontana, Riverside, and then there's 3. And you're driving along on the interstate, I believe it's Interstate 10, and you just go between these and you don't even, Ontario. So I believe it's because the reason I know this is because there's 3 NASCAR tracks involved. This is probably a fact you're going to least likely to remember in the next 5,000 years. But since it's a fact that's kind of glued in my head, Riverside, California was a road course that NASCAR ran back in the day. Fontana is where now the current California Speedway is. And then on Ontario, California was a replica of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that NASCAR ran back in the 80s. So Riverside, Fontana, and Ontario is boom, 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 and you just drive through them. You don't even realize that you are moving through. Let me close that. That's kind of distracting. I'm watching that YouTube video out of the corner of my eye. All right, so I got some Christian news stories I want to get to today. As you know, Thanksgiving is tomorrow. I guess if I had to pick a holiday that least offends me, I guess it would probably be Thanksgiving. I'm not very keen on Christmas. Not at all keen on Easter. In fact, I'm going to share with you a story. Let me see if I can find that. All right, here, let's go with this one first, because this kind of speaks to my qualms about certain things. I guess you have a couple of, you have Halloween, you have Christmas, you have Thanksgiving, you have Easter, you have 4th of July, you have a lot of various holidays. I'm not real keen on Christmas or Easter. And some people may think that's a little perplexing being a Christian. But I think much of Christmas and Easter has its roots in paganism. In fact, I know it has its roots in paganism. The Thanksgiving is probably the least offensive of the holidays to me, even though I'm not real keen on it either. But I do kind of like it, and I used to kind of like the Thanksgiving football games and things like that, but not so much anymore. But here's 5 clear, simple steps to help you simplify the holidays. With Thanksgiving officially kicking off the beginning of the holiday and eating season, the Happy Society of People has released their free 5-step to simplify your holidays guide to help people navigate this hectic time of year. Between choosing the perfect gifts, baking the perfect seasonal treats, and creating the perfect home ambiance, it's no wonder that people feel especially stressed between Thanksgiving and New Year's. Recent studies suggest that those feelings may be more common than we may have believed, as I would guess this is supposed to say as evidenced, but it says as evinced. I'm thinking it's evidenced. As evidenced by a Beating the Holiday Burn survey commissioned by Perigo Company, PLC, last year that revealed an alarming 88% of Americans 18 and older. 88%. Boy, it don't get much higher than that, friend. That's just hovering at 90%, and there's probably a couple 2 or 3% factor of error involved in that. So, you could be talking as over 90% and maybe lower 80s. But that's nearly 9 out of every 10 Americans 18 years and older feel stressed during the holidays. Well, why not? You got to spend an arm and a leg. You got to go in debt to your eyeballs to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. So this article is going to give you 5 simple, clear steps to simplify your holidays. To keep you smiling over the next few weeks, here are the top 5 ways to help simplify your holidays. Get organized. Get a master plan. Get a calendar. Do things planning. Number 2, make shopping fun. Comes as no surprise that 1 in 5 Americans dread holiday gift shopping because they know they're going to go in debt. They know they can't possibly pay for this stuff. They know they're going to pay through the nose to the credit card companies. There's things called buyer's remorse, but their kids won't let up. Their kids are relentless. They just need that thing on TV. Mom, Dad, I just need, I need that thing. Number 3, determine your holiday meals. The phrase menu planning is particularly relevant this time of year. See, that's where I kind of go off the rails. kind of countercultural. See, sometimes I love homemade stuffing. And I mean the good kind of stuffing where it isn't like soggy. I like more of the dry stuffing. And you take, well, I would suggest Vienna bread. You got your sage and your poultry seasoning. You fry you saute your onions, your mushrooms, and in butter. You have a couple of sticks of butter. You break up the bread. You pour this mixture over the bread. You might hit it with a little bit of chicken broth. But you cover that with aluminum foil and you bake it for 45 minutes with the aluminum foil on. And then the last 15 minutes, you take the lid off, the aluminum foil off, and you bake it 15 minutes without the foil. And it's kind of like a stuffing cake. It's not that runny, sagey stuff you buy at the grocery store that tastes like they killed it in sage. Sage is something that goes a long way. You want to use, I use 3 or 4, depending on the baking dish, depending on the bread, depending on the amount of product I use. I might use 3 to 4 teaspoons of poultry seasoning. Then I might add a teaspoon of pepper. I might add a teaspoon or 2 of sage. But some people, they overdo the sage and it's just almost unedible. Then I don't like stuffing cooked inside a bird. I like the stuffing cooked outside of the bird. But that's how I like to cook stuffing. But if I want stuffing on the 4th of July, feed me stuffing on the 4th of July. I don't need to wait till Christmas. I don't need to wait till the holidays to eat something I want to eat. So maybe on Thanksgiving, I might go a little countercultural and eat meatloaf and homemade meatloaf and homemade potato salad. Maybe some baked beans with that. And I mean baked beans that you can stand the fork up in, stand the spoon up in. I mean, you drain off the juice, you have the hard beans, you put in your brown sugar, you put in your onions, and maybe if you want some green or red pepper real finely diced up, you put that in. Put your brown sugar, maybe a little BQ sauce. We used to put some ketchup, mustard, stuff like that, but you drain the beans, the brown sugar, and you bake it almost as long as you bake the turkey. And these beans are indestructible. They're bullets. They don't fall apart like a normal brown bean. They're the Bush's baked beans or the old Heinz beans. They come in the short round can. And you can bake them, but the bottom line is when you stick the spoon, you know they're done when you stick the spoon in and the spoon stands up. That's a baked bean to me. Baked beans is not some runny soup bean. Baked where it's solid, it sticks to your ribs, where you got your stuffing that is more like a dry stuffing cake stuff, not that runny. Your baked beans, your spoon stands up. Your potatoes, your potato salad, your spoon stands up. It's rib sticking food. Sometimes I might be hungry for that on Valentine's Day, 4th of July. Of course, nobody wants to fire up the oven on 4th of July. But you see my point here. I don't have to be forced to think, to act, and do a certain way because society says this is the way I should be. I should cook a turkey. There's people who are not Seventh-day Adventists who, they might cook a ham on Easter and a turkey on Thanksgiving, and maybe they got a ham and a turkey both on Christmas. I don't know. Never ate a cooked ham in my life for any holiday because I never ate cooked ham, period. But the point is, I don't want to have to be typecast, eat a certain thing, act a certain way, buy a certain product. And you could simplify your life if you would kind of take that attitude that culture's shoving a certain thing at you, that you got to act and think a certain way. Well, sorry, Frank the First don't think and act like it. I fired up the grill and cooked me a piece of steak. What would be called chuck eye steak, which is kind of what they call the poor man's ribeye. I might fire up the grill and throw on some applewood charcoal and then some applewood chips and smoke a piece of steak, and I might have that on Thanksgiving with some potato salad and then maybe some watermelon for dessert. See, I like to eat what I want to eat. There used to be an old cook on TV I used to really enjoy. I don't know if y'all remember Juice Dan Wilston. He was a Cajun from Louisiana, and he always wore that blue shirt and suspenders. And he had the red tie, not a bow tie, but I don't know, it was a bow, and then it had I don't know if it was a lariat tie. I don't know what exactly they called it, but he had the red tie on. Juice Dan would say, well, you know, why do I like my potato salad with dill relish. Why do I put dill relish in potato salad? Because I like dill relish in potato salad. Not a sweet relish kind of guy myself either, so me and Juice Dan, we got along. He'd say, oh, you'd take the jar, and he'd say, oh, put a little bit of that, put a little bit of that. So he'd put a tablespoon of salt, and he'd pour a tablespoon. He said, you don't believe that's a tablespoon? He said, I guarantee. And he would take his hand, and he would pour it into that spoon, teaspoon, tablespoon, and it would be just right there. He would guarantee. He liked Louisiana hot sauce. He might say, well, I like a red wine with fish. Maybe they tell you to eat a white wine with fish. I don't know, because I'm not a wine connoisseur. But they'll tell you to drink a certain wine with a certain fish or a certain wine with a certain meal. And you'd say, I drink red wine with my fish because, why do I do that? Because I like red wine with my fish or white wine or whatever it was. I think it was red. But I like Juice Dan Wilson. He's a pretty cool old boy. He reminded me of my grandpa, Courtney. Kind of walk to the beat of a different drum. I wear it as a badge of honor that I don't go to the churches the same day as everybody goes to church. I don't drive the same car that everybody drives. See, when everybody was in the 1960s had their small block Chevrolet racing from block to block, I drove a Ford. Some people said found on road daily. I said fast on road daily. If they said fix or repair daily, I said fierce on road daily. Because I didn't drive the same car everybody drove, and I didn't go to church on the same day that everybody went to church, and I wore it as a badge of honor. Why be embarrassed? Why be ashamed? If you're convicted, live out your convictions. But, number 4, create your holiday greetings. And number 5, final on this story. You gotta be patient here because I got 2 screens now. I got 2 keyboards and 2 mice. And I kind of forget sometimes which one is to which screen and which one's to which keyboard. I got them side by side on one mouse pad. So usually the right one's for the right computer and the left one's for the left computer, but, you know, hard to teach an old dog new tricks. But number 5, wrap it up. If you didn't buy gift wrap during last year's after Christmas sales, purchase. You know what I used to do for Christmas? I used to take the Sunday Funny papers. You know, because they were colored. The Sunday papers were colored. They were funny. Or maybe I would use the Kmart ad, the Target ad, something that was, I would use things for wrapping paper. I don't need to go out and spend a fortune on wrapping paper. Get a bag of bows. Get the sports page if you're going to wrap something for your husband. If you're a lady, maybe you get the sports page and wrap his gifts in the sports page. Put a brown or a yellow bow on it, because you remember the old Sunday paper, it used to be kind of a yellowish, yellow sports page. But I would use the colorful paper. I didn't use just the black and white ads and papers. I'd use the colorful paper. Maybe I'd have a bag of bows and a bunch of Sunday newspaper, because you had to get rid of it somehow. You're going to get rid of it anyway. So I'd wrap Christmas presents in it. That's just how I'm just a little bit that way. I'm just not going to do things like you want me to do them. I'm sorry. I'm going to do things the way I want, the way I'm convicted. I don't care what you do. It wasn't a matter of being tight. Although I'm not one who likes to spend money. I'm not one that likes to go in debt, but I just decided I'm going to not do everything the way everybody says it should be done. But the final one is wrap it up. If you didn't buy gift wrap, purchase this stuff at Dollar Tree, warehouse, box stores. Great prices. People usually go out after Christmas and they buy all their gift wrapping, all their ornaments, all their stuff, and they get it, a couple days after Christmas, because everybody's getting rid of their stuff. They're clearing out their inventory. So a lot of people buy all this stuff for next Christmas, which is a good idea, because obviously they're going to charge you a premium price. Now, if you want to go to the mall and you want to spend a lot of money to have somebody wrap a present for you, that's okay too. Especially if it's, just a one-off gift. I don't know that I would want to pay the mall to wrap every present I have. I think our church school out on Watrous has a situation where they will have fundraisers, and you can bring your presents out, and the church school kids will wrap your presents, and the money goes to a good cause because it's supporting the church school. But the idea here is, friends, 88%. 88%. I mean, that's a mind-blowing statistic. What does 88% of anybody ever agree on? You ever see 88% of anybody agree in politics? 88% of Americans say that the holidays is a stressful time because they feel like they're drowning. They feel they're being boxed in. They're feeling like society's pressuring them, intimidating them to live a certain standard. What if you're some schlub that watches these commercials that somebody's giving away a new car with a bow on it? $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 automobile. You feel like a piece of dirt because you couldn't even think of giving a gift like that to someone. You couldn't pay for one of those cars if you took a 7 to a 10 year. I don't want to call it mortgage, but car loan. If you financed a car loan for 10 years, you probably couldn't get a payment low enough to pay for a $100,000 vehicle. Society just is relentless, and in all of it, it's all leading to Christmas. You go from Halloween, and as soon as Halloween is wrapped up, they got the Christmas stuff out. They kind of look over Thanksgiving. Then it's all done. You have a meal you eat in about 20 minutes. Might take you hours upon hours upon hours to fix and plan. Everybody sits down and they eat, and it's all said and done in 20 minutes. You wash the dishes, and it's done. It's done. Now, I mean, you can take some leftovers home. You can do all kinds of stuff, but it's done. 20 minutes is done. 30 minutes gift wrapping is done. You know how your kids open these gifts, because the one that intrigues them, they open their gifts under the tree, and they're just sure it's something that it isn't. They find out that it's a box. They're not sure, they're not quite sure what that box is, but they think they know what it is. And they open the box, and it's full of socks and underwear and clothes, and they toss that to the side. They toss that to the side because they're looking for that thing they're looking for, that toy, that thing that they really desire. Everything else is just cannon fodder. And the papers are torn up and they're thrown, and it's all done in 30 minutes. But the debt is crushing. The debt for that 30 minutes of pleasure, that debt for that 20 minutes of pleasure is crushing. This is why people are suicide is prevalent around the holidays. This is why people get so depressed during the holidays, is because they feel like they're trapped, that they got to live up to the standards. Now, it's not near as bad as it used to be. Trust me, it's not near as bad as it used to be in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, but, because there was traditional, nobody worked. Now stores are open, things are open, not everything, but Walgreens will stay open and things will stay open. Listen, Prairie Meadows might shut down for, I don't know. My friend talked me into going to Prairie Meadows one night with him. Thanksgiving evening, and that place, the parking lot, was as jam-packed and full as I'd ever seen it in my life. And I walked in Prairie Meadows with my friend because he liked to gamble, and he's a great karaoke singer, loves to sing. I never gambled, if I did, it was something he gave me, some money he gave me. I could never gamble money of my own because I just thought I was throwing it down the toilet. I might as well throw it outside in the wind. But we'd go out, and the place was packed. Walked in the place, I never seen so many old people on crutches, wheelchairs, walkers, oxygen bottles. It was an old age home fest. I'm going, when you're on oxygen, friend, when you're on oxygen, you're pretty much on the last leg of your life. What kind of shallow life does someone have that rather than make amends with their family, maybe they're going to die in a year, maybe they got 6 months to live, I don't know what they got, I don't know their stories, I can't stop and talk to each individual. But rather than to make amends with family members, reconcile relationships, get your heart closer to the Lord, you're on oxygen, go out to Prairie Meadows and breathe some tobacco smoke. I never seen anything like it. I never seen so many walkers, so many wheelchairs, so many crutches, so many oxygen bottles in one place in my life as a Thanksgiving evening. I couldn't believe my eyes. But then Christmas, Prairie Meadows actually closed down 24 hours. I think they Christmas Eve to Christmas Eve, and then I believe they opened at 6 o'clock that evening, Christmas Day. But I do think they shut down for 24 hours. But in the 1960s, everything was shut down. There wasn't gas stations, there wasn't anything. Just emergency things, your hospitals, your fire departments, your police departments, stuff like that. But there was no stores open. It was like a ghost town. You couldn't even, I mean, you better buy your batteries for your kids' games because there was no Walgreens. There wasn't nowhere to go. There was nowhere to go. I think Casey's was one of the first things that started popping open on Christmas. Walgreens, and now some other things open. But in the 1960s, friend, it was a ghost town. No traffic on the road. But people are missing the reason for the season, the reason for the season. We celebrate Thanksgiving because of God blessed this land, the United States of America, for Protestant Christianity to flee from England. Now, did we treat the Native Americans right and was slavery right? No, but let's not focus on every country's got crap in their closet they would rather not face. You think we're the only country? We're one of the few countries that abolished slavery. But the reason for the season is we reverence the idea that God gave us, after the Dark Ages, a respite. The beast power was ended in 1798 when Napoleon's General Berthier took the Pope into captivity. Pulled the teeth out of the papacy, pulled the teeth out of the beast. Beast bite wasn't so tough anymore. But that deadly wound, that fatal wound, was healed, according to Revelation. But we fled. Or the Boston Tea Party, no taxation without representation. You know the story. I don't have to tell you all the story. You know the story. We came to this country seeking freedom of our religion, freedom of our faith, freedom to follow our conscience. Then we celebrate Christmas because of Jesus' birth, but Christmas isn't anywhere near Jesus' birth. It was a sign to Christ because it was really the Tammuz, the god, the fertility god. Then don't even get me started on Easter. I despise Easter, probably worst of all the holidays, even though it gives lip service to Christ is risen, but there's a whole lot of Easter eggs and crappy candy. Listen, I'm going to tell you, the absolute crappiest candy of any holiday during the year is Easter candy. That is the lousiest, the hollow Easter bunny, chocolate eggs, the marshmallow peeps, and all that stuff. That stuff is horrendous. I despise Easter. Christmas is probably the second one on my list, but Thanksgiving, I can handle Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is okay. But the message I have for you is live your life. Don't let people conform you. It's how we get herded like sheep to slaughter. Let me see. Let me click that out. I'll close some of these things because sometimes they give me a fit. Let me check that, see if I got any. Thank you, Denise. And I hope you heard me going off on. You probably did because you say I agree. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your patronage. Let me see here. I got 10 minutes before the top of the hour, so I want to hit a couple of quick stories. Well, since we're on Thanksgiving, let's hit this one. Talking worldviews at Thanksgiving. Tips for good conversations. I know many people come from families that everybody isn't a conservative. And you either love our president or you hate our president. And Thanksgiving, especially if there's alcohol involved, pardon me. Thanksgiving, especially if there's alcohol involved, or any holiday for that matter, can get a little cantankerous. Particularly if the topic gets on politics. There's nothing wrong with celebrating Thanksgiving with friends, but we shouldn't shy away from conversations about things that matter, even if the topics are super controversial. Oh, I don't know, same-sex marriage, impeachment hearings, immigration, or Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if y'all remember, but when I was a kid, there was a Thanksgiving game. The Thanksgiving game was somebody playing the Detroit Lions. And somehow along the way, the Dallas Cowboys decided to horn in on the action because they're quote-unquote America's team. Never did like people that were self-described America's team, so I never did fall in with the Cowboys, and I didn't ever fall in with this Dallas Cowboys football team, and I never fell in with the Atlanta Braves baseball team because these teams self-described as America's teams. And again, Frank is a little countercultural. And Frank is going to like who Frank likes. And I'm not going to allow the KCCI to force the Bears, the Packers, the Vikings, the Chiefs. Not going to allow KCCI and Des Moines to determine who I like. I've liked teams from the Miami Dolphins, Oakland Raiders, New York Jets. I have liked the Kansas City Chiefs in my day back in the 60s with Lenny Dawson and, the original AFL. I was an AFL fan, so I liked the Chargers. I liked all the AFL teams. They were a more wide-open football team. They opened up the scoring. It wasn't 6-3. The game was 3 field goals. Oh, boy, exciting game. It's a running game, about 10 passes and 900 runs and a score of 6-3. Wow. When the AFL come in with Lenny Dawson and Joe Namath and John Hadle and these boys, they started, Darryl LaMonica, the Mad Bomber, they started airing things out and throwing the football, and the scores were in the 30s and the 40s. Dallas Cowboys was boring because they were the NFL. I think the Cowboys were really an expansion team in the 60s in the NFL. But I never gravitated and cottoned towards... I like the Cincinnati Bengals. I like the Raiders. I like the Chiefs. I like the Dolphins. I like the Jets. I like that prediction. I guarantee, Joe Namath guaranteed he would win the 1969 Super Bowl. Joe Namath, one of my heroes in sports. But the Cowboys horned their way into the Thanksgiving tradition. I could personally do without him, but those of you who like the Cowboys, I don't get the idea that anybody should be privileged to be national audience guaranteed every holiday. What's that all about? But we can talk about Jesus on Thanksgiving. We can talk about politics. We can talk about whatever. We just want to make sure that we don't sabotage that with alcohol. First, what do you mean by that? There's a strategy for those tough conversations. Ask good questions. Questions turn monologues into dialogue, surface level discussions into something deeper, and they might even open a closed mind or two. The battle of ideas is over a battle of definition of words. Thus, it's vital in any conversation to clarify the terms being used. For example, a very important thing to clarify about whether Christians support same-sex marriage is the definition of marriage. Say, hey, hold on, before we go too far, and what kind of union should be considered marriage? Can you tell me what you mean by marriage? Here's a second question. How do you know that's true? Too often assertions are mistaken for arguments. How do you know that's true? Here is, of course, you ask someone making an assertion this question, you're going to have to be ready to receive the same question when you make an assertion. And that's okay. Christians have good reason for our faith, and we're able to defend it. Third question is, what's the source? Where'd you get your information? I get so tired of hearing, it's right-wing talking points, like they don't think there's left-wing talking points. Listen to collages they put together of media, people in the media using the same word, maybe 20 commentators, 20 broadcasters using the exact same word. The newest word is cult. Cult, cult, cult. And about 10 or 12 people the other night calling Trump supporters a cult. They might use the word existential threat. Everybody uses the same word, existential threat. Maybe it's draconian cuts. They poll test these words, bribery, and because nobody understood quid pro quo. American people, no, but you go up to on the street. I was telling my sister the other day, going to the grocery store, I said, go to 100 people on the streets of Chicago and say, stare decisis. See how many people out of that 100 knows what it means, but it's a term that is thrown around in the Supreme Court all the time because it means basically that which has been determined. So precedent, the court holds up, appreciates, reveres precedent. That which has been decided. Quid pro quo. People didn't understand what it meant, so they poll tested and they understood that people understand bribery and extortion, but they don't understand quid pro quo. So on the nightly news, particularly on the more liberal cable networks, you'll get a litany of the same people repeating the same word. That's not by accident. There's a directive sent out that said, use this word, existential. In every conversation you say, existential. When you're talking about the cuts, call it draconian cuts. If you're talking about something, use the word mainstream. So you'll hear him repeat the same word, mainstream, existential, draconian, cult. What's your source? The fourth question is, how did you come to this conclusion? Behind the person you're talking to, his and her convictions, there's always a story, maybe even a painful one. Two final questions. What if you're wrong? And what if you're right? Oh, and to get off to a great start tomorrow at the dinner table, here's a seventh question. And one of the most important. What are you thankful for? And to whom are you thankful? All right, so that's our conversation here the first hour. I would be privileged, I would be honored if you would join me the next hour after this 4-minute SRN news break.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. It's turning out to be an early winter across much of the United States with heavy snow, freezing rain, and icy conditions affecting much of Thanksgiving travel. Colorado Department of Transportation spokeswoman Tamara Rollison says their roads are no longer snowy, but travelers are advised to leave extra time because of traffic backups.
Give themselves a little bit of extra time. We do urge motorists to take it easy, obey the speed limit, and make sure they don't follow too closely, because the number one cause of crashes that we have are people going too fast or they're following too closely.
Meanwhile, state officials say long stretches of 2 interstate highways in northern Arizona's high country will likely be closed between late Thursday and early Friday because of expected heavy snowfall. The Arizona Department of Transportation says Interstate 17 for 40 miles south of Flagstaff and Interstate 40 or Old Route 66 for 185 miles between Winslow on the east and US 93 on the west likely will be closed until the snowfall lets up and the routes can be plowed. A massive explosion at a chemical plant in Texas has left 3 workers injured and blown out windows and doors in homes several miles away.
The explosion happened at the TPC chemical plant in Port Neches, about 80 miles from Houston. Mayor Glenn Johnson.
I understand what getting blown out of bed means now, because you're up quick. Windows, structural damage, I'm one of those.
Jefferson County Judge Jeff Brannick, who heads up emergency management, says his windows and doors were blown out as well, and the fire is still burning.
I don't think the focus is really on putting the fire out. It's letting the materials that are in there burn themselves out and keeping the surrounding tanks cool.
TPC says the chemical was butadiene used to make synthetic rubber, and it's affecting air quality, which is being monitored. I'm Julie Walker.
On Wall Street, the Dow by 42 points. This is SRN News. A leading theologian has a question about tomorrow's big holiday.
It is really interesting to watch the secular world speculate about just how Thanksgiving is to be celebrated. When you look at the secular mind, you have to ask the question, to whom can a secular individual be truly thankful?
Dr. Albert Mohler of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Thankfulness, rightly understood, is not an attitude. Thankfulness is a theological act. It is an act of worship. It is the act of one who knows the one to whom we are thankful.
Hear more at albertmohler.com. The University of North Carolina has agreed to expand its anti-bias training and expressly forbid anti-Semitism in campus policies as part of an agreement with the Department of Education. The move follows complaints about a March conference featuring a rapper accused of anti-Jewish bias. The agreement puts an end to the inquiry without any admission of wrongdoing on the school's part. This is SRN News. A siege of the Polytechnic University in Hong Kong by the city's police against pro-democracy protesters appears to be over, with a search of the campus finding no activists.
Hong Kong police say no riot officers will be sent onto campus tomorrow morning. Instead, a team including social workers and psychologists will begin searching buildings. They say any remaining protesters they find will be medically assessed and not arrested immediately. But specialist units will clear dangerous items, including petrol bombs, and look for criminal evidence for future prosecutions. The siege at Polytechnic University was one of the most violent and dramatic episodes in the unrest which has gripped Hong Kong. At one point, around 1,000 protesters were on site.
BBC correspondent Nick Beek. Mortgage rates crept up slightly higher this week. Mortgage buyer Freddie Mac says the average rate on a fixed 30-year mortgage ticked up to 3.68%. More details at srnnews.com. I'm Keith Peters in Washington.
Boldly speaking the truth from God's Word. KPOG, the power of God.
Every weekday on the Power of God, KPOG 102.9 FM, and live on webcast1live.com. Join us for A View from the Pew. Should you be offended, provoked, triggered, intimidated, shocked, confused, or inspired to think independently, call our studio lines at 515-442-KPOG and join the conversation. After all, it's your voice we want to hear. The View from the Pew on KPOG and webcast1live.com. Weekdays from 4 to 6 on the Power of God.
Well, welcome back. We're here with View from the Pew, heard every day, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. here at Jordan Crossing Church. If you'd like to join in, you can call, you can text, use the same number, 515-442-KPOG. 442-5764. That's 515-442-KPOG. That's the letters that associate with the numbers, correspond with the letters or correspond with the numbers, I should more aptly say. All right, so I don't know if Denise is still listening, but Denise, I have a Pope Francis story for you. Pope Francis, even having nuclear weapons is immoral. You hear that? Let me see if I can find this. I can send a message here. Just a second here. Let's see if I can find and send a message. Let me see. Go on. Nuclear. Let me see if I can get. Know if she's online. She might not be online, but I think she would appreciate this story. If she's not, check it. All right. Well, I just wanted to tag a friend of mine or comment on a friend of mine. So I'm going to go, I guess when you hear my comments, I told this person, tune in, I'm going to go nuclear on the Pope. It's kind of apropos because that's the story. All right, close that. Let me go back to my Facebook page. All right. Do you ever I don't want to beat up and pound on any good God-fearing Catholics. It's not my point. There's a lot of good Catholics that have accepted Jesus Christ as their Savior. So when I pick my fights or pick my arguments, my argument and my complaints against the papacy, not the Catholic Church. But I get a little bored with this Pope. Some people, rave, he's a good one. I don't know that any of them are good. But I don't know if you remember that during the election season in 2016, I think the Pope was challenging Donald Trump for advocating he was going to build a wall. And when you punch Donald Trump, he usually tries to punch back twice as hard, which he told the Pope, well, brother, what do you got to say? You live behind a wall. You live behind the Vatican wall. You just don't walk in and get a personal visit with the Pope. You're going to go through a load of security, if you even get to do that. But everybody else is supposed to subject themselves to open borders. Then the pontiff wants to talk about poverty, wants to lament poverty when this guy lives in the lap of luxury. I watched I don't want to say it was a Ken Burns, but I watched a 3 or 4 hour program on IPTV one night inside the Vatican, the paintings, the Michelangelo paintings, and the headdresses, and the personal chefs, the personal assistants that help dress, get his garments clean, the art, the tapestry, just everything that is the papacy. Talking about the debauchery of the popes all through history. And there's secular kings that refused to house these people because they were so debauched. They didn't want nothing to do with them. They were evil. So I usually don't take pointers from the Pope on morality. Just kind of not my bag, baby. Not my cup of tea. I'm kind of countercultural that way. I don't walk to the beat of the Pope's drum. When he comes around in his little Pope mobile, as they say, because you remember there was an assassination attempt on a Pope. Because he used to ride in those open wagons, and then they done something with plexiglass, bulletproof glass or something, and they got him riding around in a Pope mobile where he can wave at everybody. And the world, and the world, and the world wonders after the beast. Pope seems to stick his nose in a lot of things that I don't even know why he's sticking his nose in, but today the Pope is saying even having a nuclear weapon is immoral. Oh, really? These icons of morality that burnt people at the stake, using green wood to slower and lower the heat and prolong the burning and the agony process of the victim. You mean the popes that threw people in dungeons, burnt people at the stake, abused children, lived in the lap of luxury while they pleaded poverty? Talk about the Crusades, talk about the Inquisitions. The papacy's never changed its spots. It still claims the prerogative of forgiveness of sin and still claims infallibility. I don't know, brothers. You got a lot of scandal going on in the papacy for being infallible. But the Pope has come out and he said that having nuclear weapons, even having them, is immoral. It won't be known until the Lord comes how many people, nobles, the flower of society, young men, young women, that were put to death, artisans, elite, poor, whatever, put to death during the Inquisition in the most brutal of manner. Torture was the French, it was the guillotine. The papacy, it was burning at the stake. But they have a record of cruel tortures, inhumane torturing that I've read that dignitaries of the church studied under Satan, their master, to so study the anatomy of the human body that they could stretch that body to the nth degree of death only to stop the process just prior to death. Allow the victim to heal long enough so they could start the infernal process over and over and over again until the victim hailed death as sweet release. The papacy is only powerless where it's only tolerant where it's powerless, pardon me. A leopard can't change her spots. She paints herself with a fair front and is enticing Protestant Christianity to come home. The Reformation was always about, by dead or alive, bringing Protestant Christianity back to heel and back to the Mother Church. You know, they say the hymn around the cardinals, The red hem around the cardinal's robe is the blood they're willing to, I think it's be shed, but it's the blood they're willing to shed, to bloodlet, to kill, to maim, to murder. It's not the blood they're willing to endure. The sect of the Jesuits was an absolute counterfeit to the Reformation, where they would swear oaths to poverty and natural affections while they themselves lived in the lap of luxury, and they worked their ways into counselors and kings and princes, in essence to be spies on the master. So anything, theft, perjury, murder, torture, anything was not only admirable but commendable in the cause of destroying Protestant Christianity. They hunted down Christians all through the Dark Ages. They hunted them down in the caves and the mountaintops and the caverns and the catacombs. They hunted people down to snuff out Christianity. Then the Grand Compromise under Constantine, where they had the venerable day of the sun on one side of the coin and Jesus Christ on the other. They were hedging his bets. It was a grand compromise between paganism and Christianity, and they took pagan statues, and maybe this statue's the Apostle Peter, the Apostle Paul, the Mary, whoever. It's rotten to the core, friends. It's rotten to the core. And in this rotten core, there's good Catholic men and women who are trapped because they don't know any better. This is the last call. This is the last call to the world. Come out of Babylon. Don't drink the wine of the wrath for her fornication. Now hear me, and hear me clear. Here is the pontiff in the line of the pontiffs suggesting that having a nuclear war, or having a nuclear bomb, having a nuclear weapon is immoral. Do you know why we was in such a haste to build the atom bomb and the hydrogen bomb that we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? You know why there was a haste? Because whoever got it first was going to use it first. Whoever got it first was going to use it first. And we certainly didn't want Nazi Germany dropping it on us. The race was on. Germany was so far advanced in war technology, they put the United States to shame. They're scientists. These people are, German people are extremely intelligent, extremely creative, extremely work-oriented, extremely non-religious. They're a secular country. But if Adolf Hitler's Germany had garnered the atom or the hydrogen bomb before us, they would have dropped it on us. You don't think God's hands was involved to protect a country he blessed? Now, some people, my Presbyterian friends out there, might say, they might find an argument with the word blessed. I'm not saying chosen, brother. I'm saying blessed. This country's blessed. This country's not a theocracy. It's a representative republic, and we're blessed. But I want to make an analogy here. You know, the Waldenses, the Huguenots, the Lollards, the Albigenses, these last vestige of Christians alive on the world. that God cut the time short because they literally had him tracked down, hunted down into the furthest corners of the world and was about to outright slaughter it until God, for the sake of the elect, allowed the Reformation and the Renaissance to spring on the scene to thwart that effort. It was that close to Satan stomping Christianity out in this world. Do you think that the papacy, had they had a nuclear weapon, would have thought a second about using it on anyone? What if Michelangelo had built a nuclear weapon? Da Vinci, Angelo, these guys. The smart geniuses of the time, Galileo, Angelo, Da Vinci. What if these people had somehow conspired together and built a nuclear bomb? Do you think not build it, but put forth the design? You think the papacy in a heartbeat wouldn't have dropped that on anyone they could have dropped it on? With the atrocities that they committed during the Dark Ages, you think they would have hesitated a second? But we got Pope Francis here. Hop along, Francis going to tell us, yeah, it's immoral. Don't even get me started on your history of immorality, friend, because you've never changed a drop. You are only tolerant where you're powerless, and any crime, any atrocity that you committed in the past, you would commit again in a heartbeat if given the same opportunity. And you will, in Revelation, have that power through the image of the beast, and you will borrow someone else's military and economic might to enforce your mark to the Antichrist. Now, will it be this exact pope? I don't know. Doesn't make any difference. Plug one in, unplug one, plug one in. It don't make any difference. They're the same thing. Just say no. Why don't we take and liquidate? If you're so concerned about the poor, brother, why don't we take and liquidate the Vatican, the Sistine Chapel? Why don't we liquidate all the art, all the gold, all the relics? Why don't you open up the Vatican Library and open up the Vatican Bank? You want to be transparent. Why don't you step up and lead the way, brother? If these guys are going to cry crocodile tears for the poor. I don't know. And they wonder after the beast. Hiroshima was a true human. It was true human cruelty, Francis said. The Pope visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He addressed financial scandals. In this show, I found it kind of amusing because, you know, the former Pope, I think, is still alive. They were talking about an audit of the Vatican Bank. Bank of Rome, Vatican Bank. The mafia basically put out the warning over there that they're not beyond offing a pope. And of course, they had this sexual abuse scandal that was about ready to explode on the scene. So the former pope got his hind end out of there, and he dumped it on this guy, and this guy isn't doing any better. The Pope said Tommaso Di Ruzzo, who directed the Vatican's anti-money laundering entity, was arrested Tuesday with 4 other Vatican employees, including 1 clergyman. All are being interrogated by the Vatican police. Where do you think all the drug money, where do you think all the illicit profits of the syndicate crime families got laundered? Got laundered through the Vatican Bank. And they put out the warning, better not go sticking your nose in too far because we're not beyond offing a pope, they said. Pope Benedict. That's his name. So you have these financial scandals. You have these sexual abuse scandals. You have the scandals where nuns were used as sex slaves and forcibly raped and forced to have abortions. Hey, just an average day in the life of the papacy. What's a few dead kids between friends? What's a dead few kids altered on the altar to Satan in the basement of the Vatican? What's a few dead kids offered to Satan among friends? But they put on this fair front. Come home, it's safe. The ecumenical movement is this bridge back what the Reformation tore from Rome. The ecumenical movement is bridging the way back. So, I was just thought that was amusing. Pope's going to tell you it's immoral to have a wall. He's going to tell you it's immoral to have a nuclear weapon. Just wait till the beast tries to inflict his mark on all men, great and small, except those with the seal of the living God. You don't think for a second the Pope would drop a nuke on anybody he was trying to get rid of? With 3 satellites, they say they can triangulate anybody who's got a cell phone in this world. 3 satellites. Maybe the technology's less, but if they can triangulate you, well, let's see, go back afterwards from 5 till now. All right, so it's 5:28. So I've been on this for about a half hour, about 25 minutes. So I was telling a friend of mine if she wanted to listen to this, to go back to about 5 minutes after 5 till 5:28, and I'll give you an earful on the papacy. But what nerve? What nerve? Well, as I said, the ecumenical movement is trying to bridge Protestant Christianity back to Rome. What the Reformation tore apart, the ecumenical movement's trying to bridge back. But you know where Protestants got their name? Ding, 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 ding. You go to the head of class if you said from protest. But in this case, brother, most of the Protestant churches aren't protesting near enough. So, just wanted to get that down for the record. I just find it amusing. I just find it amusing. What hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is rank hypocrisy. It reeks of hypocrisy. For a man who sits behind a wall, who has a guard of Secret Service, that they would drop you in a heartbeat if you got anywhere near this guy, is going to tell you that walls are immoral. There was nothing off limits to the papacy. No crime was off limits. In fact, it was commendable if it was in the cause of beating down, dead or alive, Protestant Christianity. That was always the cause of the Jesuits, to bring Protestantism back to heel, dead or alive. All right. What really happened at the border? Two Christian leaders. Pardon me. I got a hiccup. What really happened at the border? Two Christian leaders go see for themselves. Donald Trump inherited a crisis on the American southern border. Recently, two respected leaders traveled to the border to see the situation for themselves. Upon returning, they tried to get the word out They tried their best to get the word out on what they saw, which differs from the leftist view often presented in the media. One was Sam Rodriguez, the president of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, who appeared on Fox News with Shannon Bream to refute allegations made by freshman New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, an avowed socialist. AOC, as she's called in the media, made statements in 2019 that our border facilities were like Nazi concentration camps and that some detainees had been told to drink from toilets. I must be living in a parallel universe somewhere, said Rodriguez, adding he's a devoted Trekkie, but there must be some sort of breach in the time-space continuum. After hearing the news reports that children were living in deplorable conditions at the detention center outside of El Paso, Texas, Rodriguez contacted the White House to gain access to the facility. He was permitted to walk through unrestricted and ask questions freely. I did not find soiled diapers. I did not find crying children. I did not find deplorable conditions. Quite the opposite. I found amazing people on both sides trying to make a very difficult circumstance better, so I don't know where everyone else is visiting. He asked Border Patrol agents, most of those whom were Latino, if what he was seeing was staged. They answered, Pastor Sam, absolutely not. You're looking at the very thing that existed here for weeks. He also said he learned from attorneys who reported seeing soiled diapers and other appalling conditions never actually happened. They never actually toured the center. They never visited. They took the information anecdotally from interviews with children, mind you, from the ages of 2 to 17. Rodriguez, who's neither Democrat nor Republican, told Bream both political parties have failed miserably to fix the broken immigration system. We got here because Congress is playing politics with millions of individuals, with the sovereignty of our nation, with the protection of our border. Around the same time, Dr. James Dobson, a venerated evangelical leader, visited the border at McAllen, Texas. At the invitation of the White House, he sent out a widely circulated letter to his constituents, partly to fulfill a promise to the border agents he met to set the record straight on what's really happening. I came away with an array of intense emotions, he wrote. First, I was profoundly grieved over the misery of thousands of people. Second, I felt a deep appreciation for those who are doing their best to help in impossible circumstance. Third, frankly, I was angry at the political fat cats who have deliberately allowed this chaos to occur for political gain. See, the Democrats want these people for voters, and the Republicans want these people for cheap labor. So neither party is willing to do what it takes to solve the issue. They and their friends in the fake media have told the people that there's no crisis. Shame on them all. Dobson said his heart aches for those caught up in the debacle on the border, but he added, "Lest I be misunderstood, let me make it clear that I am among the majority of Americans who want the border to be closed to those who attempt to enter illegally. There has to be a better solution than this. I've wondered with you why the authorities just don't deny these refugees access to this nation. Can't we just send them back to their places of origin? The answer I received was no, and for reasons I will explain. Only 10% of the detainees are Mexican. This year alone, people have come to our country through our southern border from 127 countries, including Bangladesh, Pakistan, Turkey, India, China, Albania, El Salvador, and Guatemala, Honduras, and other nations. They speak our native language, which means they speak their native language, which means they can't be understood by each other or the staff. What are we to do with them? The Mexican government will not take them back, and there's no place to send them. Our current law does not permit us to repatriate them to their country of origin. This is a disaster with no solution or projected conclusion." Then Dobson makes this profound point about what will happen if we do nothing. Their numbers will soon overwhelm the culture as we know it and could bankrupt the nation. America has been a wonderfully generous and caring country since its founding. That is our Christian nature. But in this instance, we have met a worldwide wave of poverty that will take us down if we don't deal with it, and it won't take long for the inevitable consequences to happen. As such leaders as Dobson and Rodriguez speak out, the truth about the situation is becoming better understood, as well as the risk of allowing this flood of immigration to continue. Do you understand? And I'm going to make this very plain for you, and I'm going to speak really slowly. The secret to the success of the United States of America is it was founded as a Protestant republic. If we allow in everyone who wants to come to our country from 127 different countries, including Bangladesh, Pakistan, Turkey, India, China, Albania, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, how long do you think we're going to remain a Protestant republic? It's being sent to us. This crisis is being sent to us by the Catholic Church, by the papacy, being sent from the south of the border to communize the nation, the United States of America. That's the goal. Communism is being perpetrated by the Catholic Church, by the papacy. Because the papacy does not want, the only thing that's withheld the teeth of the papacy of what she was in her former days is Protestant Christianity has stood up to her in this nation. Or else it would be the same atrocities all over again. All right, so I got, let me see here. I'm going to hit a couple of quick stories, just boom. Not going to get too much into them. So I got to leave about 15 minutes for the Sabbath school study. Close that. This is a story about the Texas governor. Okay, come on, let's go. Okay. Texas governor says glory of God was revealed through his paralysis. Texas Governor Greg Abbott in recent days gave a peek into his Christian faith, his theology, asserting on social media that God used for good an accident that placed him in a wheelchair. Abbott, 62, has been paralyzed below the waist since 1984 when an oak tree fell on him while he was jogging. Last Friday, Abbott posted on Twitter a video of a muscular wheelchair-bound man making his way up a climbing wall using only his hands. Never quit, never give up, overcome any challenge. When Twitter user responded to a negative comment, so great to see, but if you ever end up in a wheelchair, I'm just ending it. Abbott spoke up. If I ever end up in one, I'm just ending it. Abbott spoke up. That's what I thought before I ended up in a wheelchair, Abbott tweeted. But I've done more things after the accident that left me paralyzed than before the accident. With God, all things are possible. So here's somebody crediting, glory to God, through their paralysis. Another quick story here. Franklin Graham said his words was twisted by the media after he suggested demonic activity may be behind Trump's opposition. Well, why would anybody think that? They're only got a bunch of Wiccan and occultists sending spells at the man. Why would anybody think there's anything demonic about it? I don't recall anybody sending demonic spells and curses and stuff at Barack Obama. I certainly didn't. I didn't send no demonic spells and curses at Bill Clinton. Why is it when George W. Bush got in office that it started ramping up the hatred and the evil? And now we just have outright Satanists, witches and warlocks, Wiccans, and all kinds of people promoting sending evil at our president. So Franklin Graham was saying that we need to pray for our president, number one, and he suggested that there's demonic activity behind the Trump opposition. Duh! Let's see, I've got two more stories here. Spiritual discernment. Biblical spiritual discernment comes from the Spirit of God within us. It is not available to those without Christ in them. Paul describes in Corinthians 2 and calls it the mind of Christ. It's more than reading and learning things from the Bible. It's part of the Spirit within us. So it's this idea of discernment. You ever walk into a situation where your, what they might call your spidey, tingly senses go up? Do you ever feel that, when you get into a situation and you feel a spirit of evil behind something, a spirit of darkness, you just discern it? It's a gift. Wisdom and spiritual discernment is a gift. But it comes to us through the Comforter. It comes through us from the Spirit. Now the last story here, forming a more perfect union. We're back to Thanksgiving here. Forming a more perfect union, navigating political and religious differences at a holiday gathering. I wrote the original version of the post when Barack Obama had been elected. Sadly, it remains true. My relatives are an eclectic bunch, pretty evenly split, using crude and somewhat tasteless labels between left and right. Some who think Democrats are socialists and others are disappointed because they're not progressive enough. Other religious diversities including Mormon, Lutheran, Episcopalian, Evangelical, Catholic, and a few are unaffiliated. Widen that circle to incorporate surrogate family and friends who are like family. You add Presbyterians, Jews, atheists, pagans, spiritualists, Buddhists, millions of other families this time of year are in similar situations. And as we gather around our family table or share cards and letters this holiday season, can we put aside our passionate differences for a few hours? Divides like this have always existed. Of course, children of traditionalists often reject tradition. Parents are usually more conservative than their offspring, but recent years have been different for two reasons. First, major shifts generationally and ideologically have resulted in many feeling left out the party, so to speak. The spiritual but not religious and independent left-right leaning, I tend to believe that both in politics and religions, this is a sign that we're at an important pivotal point, but it doesn't make it any less uncomfortable. Second, politics is the ugliest I've seen in modern history. There's plenty of hurt feelings all around. A lot of fear gets stirred up. In couples counseling, it's an axiom that the most toxic thing to a relationship is not when the partners disagree or even fight, but when they stop respecting one another. We don't talk anymore. We can't have a conversation because people want to start calling names and shut the conversation down. You say something, you're a racist. Well, who wants to talk to a racist? Who wants to talk to a fascist? First thing that happens when you start throwing names around is you're going to shut down conversation. We should all do our best to listen to one another. I'm not suggesting some sloppy relativism that assumes that people are saying is right for them and cannot be faulted, but I am challenging you to accept views of others as legitimately arrived at rather than dismissing them as uninformed or evilly motivated without trying to understand. My Christian faith teaches me that there is a God and that they are people in God who are my brothers and sisters, to see everyone through love. It challenged me to look past surface differences, past things that annoy and anger me, and see God in them. Each of us is a flawed, silly creature doing our best to make sense of the world. I'm to forgive them in their trespasses, just as I would hope they would forgive me in mine. One of the traps of politics is it's so easy to entrench oneself in a particular camp or philosophy surrounded by like-minded people to never listen to the other side. It's called groupthink. Hebrew has at least two words for listen, shama and hiazin. Hiazin literally means give ear. Shama, on the other hand, means hear. Give ear and hear. Listen. So that's about as much of that article as I'm going to share. The rest of it is just focusing on Thanksgiving, but there's a message here. Quit dismissing everybody and trying to shut down the conversation because of something you don't want to hear by calling someone a fascist or a racist or a homophobe or a xenophobe or a misogynist or whatever the name it is you want to call them. Stop with the name calling and actually have a conversation. All right, so Sabbath school lesson for Wednesday. We're going to, let me see, that was humbled before God. Deuteronomy 31 through 6. And when all these things come upon you, the blessings and the curses which I have set before you, and you call them to mind among the nations where your Lord God has driven you, and you return, Lord, to your God, and you to your children, and obey his voice in all that I command you today, with all your heart, with all your soul, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have mercy on you, and he will gather you again from all the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. If your outcasts are in the uttermost parts of heaven, from there the Lord will gather you, and from there he will take you. And the Lord your God will bring you into the land that your fathers possessed, that you may possess it. And he will make you a more prosperous and numerous than your fathers, and the Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your offspring, that you may love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your soul, that you may. What promise here was given to the Hebrew people? What must this promise, among others, mean to them like Ezra and Nehemiah? Well, they knew they had a job, and their job was to instruct. Their job was to lead to this goal. It's a basic, simple message. Turn thy foot away from wickedness and turn towards obedience. It's not that complicated, people. God wanted a peculiar people then. He wants a peculiar people now. A people that doesn't walk, talk, eat, act like everyone else. Ezra and Nehemiah knew the prophecies. They knew that God was going to bring the people back from captivity. We saw that in Nehemiah 9, that they understood their history and the reasons for their troubles. And at the same time, too, they knew God's graciousness and leading despite their sins. Thus, they trusted in the Lord that he would make the return from captivity successful. These promises, however, didn't mean that they would not face many challenges along the way. In much of this quarter so far, we've looked at the trials and tribulations they faced, even amid the promises of God. Ezra 8, 16 to 23. So Ezra gathered all the men together. Eliezer, Ariel, Shemaiah, Elnathan, Jerub, Elnathan, Nathan, Zechariah, Meshullam. I mean, there's some names that I'm sure I'm mispronouncing. But there was a fasting and a prayer for protection. Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river of Ahava, that we might humble ourselves before our God to seek from him a safe journey for our children and all our goods. For I was ashamed to ask the king for a band of soldiers and horsemen to protect us against the enemy on our way, since we had told the king, the hand of our God is on us for good, all who seek him. However, his wrath against all who forsake him. So we fasted and implored our God for this, and he listened to our entreaty. This is the original group of exiles who left the Persian Empire to go back to Jerusalem. So I believe there was a number of people, and then he had to rally the troops to get another 40 more Levi priests and 220 ministers, helpers, and teachers. What was the challenges here, and how did they respond to it? Well, they had to get enough people, for one. They needed a safe journey. And Ezra did not want to look weak to the king. Now, Nehemiah, on the other hand, asked for an official military escort with papers that he could get timbers and whatever he needed to build the gate, fortify the gate, whatever he needed. But Ezra felt no such desire to procure soldiers and horsemen to protect them, because that would show weakness to the enemy nations, that somehow they didn't trust in their God. Despite the promises, Ezra knew just how dangerous the journey would be. Thus, the fasting and humbling before the God were the ways of acknowledging just how dependent they were on the Lord for their success. At this time, with so many dangers ahead of them, the idea of asking the king for help and protection had at least occurred to Ezra. But in the end, he chose not to do that, in contrast to Nehemiah 2:9. Then I came to the governors in the province beyond the river and gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent me with officers of the army and horsemen. So Nehemiah did have an escort to protect him. Ezra obviously felt that if he had asked, it would have brought dishonor on the Lord. Now, why Nehemiah didn't think it would bring dishonor on the Lord, I can't necessarily nuance out the two leaders, the decision-making of the two leaders. But Ezra said, the hand of our God is upon all those for good who seek him, but his power and his wrath are against those who forsake him. And Ezra 8:22, for I was ashamed to request the king an escort. In this case, it worked out well for them. For he later wrote in Ezra 8:31, then we departed from the river Ahava on the 12th day of the first month to go to Jerusalem. The hand of our God was on us, and he delivered us from the hand of the enemy and from the ambushes on the way. that the Lord had protected them and they made it to their destination safely. Of course, we're to trust in God for everything. At the same time, too, what are the times when we do call upon even those not of our faith for help? Well, was it Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt to seek protection from Herod the Great and the slaughter of the innocents? I believe it was David that may have sought protection at some point from the Philistines. I mean, there's always been instances, and I can't remember if it was exactly the Philistines, but David did seek refuge in a foreign land from Saul. There's instances in the Bible where God used foreign leaders. Obviously, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. He ended up being king over Egypt. Jacob sent his sons in to get food because there was a famine in the land and there was no food. So God routinely uses secular men. He used Cyrus. He used Darius Hystaspes. He used Cyrus the Great, Darius Hystaspes, and Artaxerxes Longinus. In many cases, why is that not wrong or perhaps even appropriate? Because godly men are going to be an influence even in godless heathen nations. And God needs his ambassadors sometimes to go into dangerous lands to show and demonstrate God's power, God's glory, and ability to protect his witnesses. Are they all protected? No. There's many people in the mission fields who are slaughtered brutally and ruthlessly. But Daniel was thrown in a lion's den by King Nebuchadnezzar. I believe he was, pardon me. Yes, no, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. Let me back up a bit. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was thrown in the fiery furnace by Nebuchadnezzar. And Daniel was thrown in the lion's den by Darius the Mede. I want to get those straight. A lot of that stuff, when you read it, it all just kind of blends together. But there is, But Nehemiah and Ezra were both confidants to King Artaxerxes. Valued. One was a cupbearer. Nehemiah was the cupbearer, and Ezra was a scribe. These men were valued for their counsel. They were friends to the king. This is why God allows us to be put in precarious situations sometimes, because he shows his power and his glory, not our power, nor our glory. So, we're just about a minute and 10 seconds from checking out here. Head home for Thanksgiving. I'm going to pop up a Facebook post before I get out of here. But we're coming upon the Christmas season. We're coming upon New Year. If you're listening to this show, you value anything about this show, if you gain any insight, any discernment, any wisdom into anything, share this show with your friends. Share it with your family. Whatever I say, whatever I do, I seek to do all to the glory of God. So I probably won't be in tomorrow. Likely will be in Friday. But until then, this is Frank the Verse Thomas, signing out with our view from the pew.
KPOG 102.9 FM, Grimes.